All right.
Hello.
We are officially live. Hello.
Hello, America, Amy, and the world. That's a nice catchphrase, isn't it, Amy?
America, Amy, and the
If this
world.
catches on, you get printed on T-shirts, maybe.
We're right in the middle. I'm in the middle of America. Literally. Yeah, pretty much.
Right.
Which is always
Yeah.
interesting.
By the way, I mean, I told you the other day I kept hearing that country music song, and then Travis, what's his name, died.
Oh, yeah. I know. Isn't that weird? Or Toby Keith? Which one? Is it two?
Oh yes, Toby Keith. Yeah, yeah. It was Toby Keith died. Yeah, I kept hearing that the lights went out in Georgia, and then I know it's a very loose connection, but it was a strange song to keep hearing on mainstream radio. You know what I mean?
It is, and I thought maybe it had something to do with politics, but it could, because we have a huge case down in Georgia for election interference with you know who, and and so I thought maybe it had something to do with that, but I don't know. It could be about Toby Keith, which he said he had cancer, but nobody knew, he was going to pass this soon. So
it happened quite quickly, yeah.
But he's not like the nicest guy. Maybe he was a nice guy, but his political beliefs were pretty harsh, and he was more aligned with.
Was he a Republican?
Yeah, pretty radical Republican, guns and all that stuff.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. Well, I just thought there was a strange connection. It was a strange song to be. That was Vicki Lawrence, wasn't it? She sung it first. She was Carol Burnett's protege, wasn't she?
Yeah, kind of like
and then of course Reba McEntire covered that song and it made it I wouldn't say made it a success. She sort of reintroduced it to like a new audience, didn't she?
Yeah.
And that. Yeah. Is Carol Burnett still alive, Amy? Do you know?
She is, and what's funny about Carol Burnett is I've always felt kind of aligned with her because her birthday's kind of close to mine, and I remember reading her book about her life growing up in Hollywood with her mother was an alcoholic, her grandmother was kind of out there, and she grew up in a Hollywood apartment.
Oh, really?
And it's just hilarious. It's you could see that she's just naturally funny and really interesting person and beloved. I love her.
You only have to look at her, don't you? Yeah. She's one of those. She doesn't have to do a lot to sort of. The funniest moments I think on the Carol Burnett show. I mean, it was a funny show anyway, but the funniest moments were when there was when something went wrong. Kind of at the sides to the slave camera and that, and which he picked up from Jack Benny, I think. Have a camera to her left or right all the time, so if something went wrong, she could look at it with a kind of askance and that. And, probably the first lady of comedy, maybe.
Maybe so. If you watch her, there's this channel that shows old Jack Benny episodes, and really early in the morning. So I'll wake up and drink my coffee, and it'll be on. And there's this episode with her and Jack Benny where they play a couple of caveman, cavewoman. Have you seen that? And you could just see her natural. She's really pretty too. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but she had that natural ability to just act wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. But one of my favorite stories is that she. Well, go ahead. What were you gonna say?
No. Carry on. Sorry.
Well, one of her stories when she was a kid in the hotel in Hollywood was that she spent an entire day running up and down the stairs to trick her friends into thinking she had a British cousin, kind of like Patty Duke, I thought that was so funny that she would not only keep it up, but, create that character. And it was early. It was early on for her.
That's total commitment to a role, isn't it? If you keep it going to that length. And I used to do things like that as well, but it'd get out of hand, and I didn't invent illnesses for people who weren't real. And I'm talking about when I don't mean they don't do it now, but it's that Munchausen syndrome by proxy. If you're inventing an imaginary friend and then say that person is is ill, and that. So I brought the tone down again, Amy. My apologies.
My mother used to do that. She would say, don't lay on the couch when you're eating an apple because you'll choke. And I had a friend who died from choking on an apple. And you're like, wow, that's terrible. And then if we sat too close to the fireplace, she'd say, don't sit too close because an ember could fly out and get on your clothes and you die. And I had a friend who died from it. It's like she would always have this dead friend example. And one day I was like, wait, I think you made all of that up. Just to...
How many friends of yours died?
Exactly.
Did any of them survive? Yeah. No, it's the classic one, isn't it? What was it? What Johnny Carson used to say about his mother used to say to him, don't wear ripped underwear in case you're involved in a car accident.
Exactly.
Like they're not going to let you in the hospital if they find out your underwear's ripped or something, or that kind of thing. But get back to Carol Burnett. She was with SCTV, not SCTV. She was with the Groundlings, wasn't she? She was.
I don't know. I do know this. She went to a California college in theater and performing arts, music, and all that. And then someone gifted her money to go to New York, or maybe I think that's what it was. And she went to New York, lived in an all-girls apartment, and would go out and audition for shows and plays, and was completely rejected the entire time. Completely rejected. Could not get a gig. And so she said, I know what, I'm with all you talented ladies. Why don't we have a review and do our own? And that's how she got famous, is the initiative was to create her own, which I find that amazing. She just.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's fantastic. Not Second City, that's what I was thinking of. Not SCTV. That was much. Second City, she was, eventually she was there with Alan Arkin and Mike Nichols and Mel Brooks, people like that. And one of the people off the show was it'll come to me later.
Well, Tim Conway.
Trivia already.
Howard. Tim Conway, Howard. He just died.
That's it, Tim Conway, yeah.
Yeah.
It was, Tim Conway and Alan Arkin, Carol Burnett, they were all, But I still watch I Love Lucy over here in Britain. It's like a perennial. It's fantastic, isn't it? And it's apart from like the format being black and white and a few of the fashion accessories, it still plays well today as a relevant, funny sitcom. Like the idea that funny is funny all the time. That might not be true, but in that case it is. You can see that they're having fun with it. And she was a genius, Lucille Ball.
Yeah, the fact No, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just going to say, did you remember the last one she did where she was like in her 80s though? And it was called Life with They were trying to get her to do things she was doing when she was in her 20s. And you just thought,
Yeah, she had a series of.
Just leave it as it was, But Sally, you're going to say about it?
Well, she was another one. I read her biography too, or autobiography, where she had a lot of trouble in Hollywood as a starlet. She bleached her hair blonde, and she actually was friends with who's the dancer with Fred Astaire?
Ginger Rogers.
Ginger Rogers, and in fact, in that film with Fred Astaire, was it on the Ritz? Oh God, the Top Hat movie and the famous dance and everything. Lucille Ball appears in that movie, but she just couldn't get a decent gig until finally she dyed her hair red and all that stuff, and became who she is. And she was told that her timing was bad. Desi Arnaz told her timing was off, and I'm like, what? I never noticed that with her. I don't think her timing was off at all. I feel like she had great timing.
No, she was superb. Yeah, of course. Was it Senator McCarthy tried to destroy her, didn't he? Because
yes, there's that too. Yes.
Because she rejected his sexual advice, supposedly, and then he said, "Oh, she's a communist," and he put that out about it, and she said that famous line, the famous line. She said, "The only thing red about me is my hair, and even that's dyed."
Oh, yeah.
That's a superb comeback as far as comebacks go. Now, of course, it doesn't matter if you're a communist; you can be whatever you want, can't you? But the paranoia, as such as it was in Hollywood at the time, You know, like, how do you feel as an American, Amy? Sorry, I'm not. Sorry, that was quite a loaded segue into question. So, how do you feel like John Wayne? Are you on the side that you're patriotic towards him, or do you think he was detrimental to?
Okay.
Be aware, the FBI is listening.
All right, so John Wayne, he was one of those guys where growing up, he was that figure, like that icon that we all looked up to, and there was nobody but him. There's nobody like him. He was just his John Wayne, kind of like Elvis was Elvis. John Wayne is John Wayne. And now I know that I found out that he did films that you would consider racist. I can't watch some of those films now. I've seen them once, and then I can't watch them again. But he actually, when people say a man should be like John Wayne, I'm like, well, actually, he was gay a little bit, and from what I've heard, which is fine. I mean, think about it. Most Hollywood people are probably in that rainbow, including Cary Grant, who was,
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Cary Grant invented bisexuality thing, but no, I know what you're saying. There's nothing wrong with being gay, but in John Wayne's case, he saw it as detrimental to himself. He hated that side of himself, and I like that story about when he made he made Red River with Montgomery Clift, and there was a fighting scene, and he couldn't wait. John Wayne was eager to get to the fighting scene because he'd been telling everyone the Montgomery Clift's a faggot, and I'm going to show him, I'm going to give him what for and whatnot, and I can't wait for this fighting scene. And Montgomery Clift actually absolutely wiped the floor with him, basically, because he'd been picked on for being, quote, a sissy, and he learned how to handle himself in self-defense classes and stuff like that, and he wasn't going to prepare. If John Wayne was going to throw a real punch when he should have been pulling them, Montgomery Clift was going to punch him back just as hard, and he learned a lesson that day, I think, John Wayne, and then the same thing happened with Rock Hudson as well. He made a film with Rock Hudson. Rock Hudson was another person who, despite his sexual proclivity, it wasn't a kind of a denotation for any effeminacy in any way. It was just that's all it was. In Rock Hudson's case, it was a sexual orientation, and in every other way, he was the alpha male. Not that there should be a distinction.
That's why I want to watch those movies with Doris Day and him, but it's just but he's an actor. He can play that role, but it's just so obvious when you watch. You're like, he obviously was gay. Yeah,
I've heard people saying, about Rock Hudson couldn't act, but obviously he could, because he fooled people for 30 years that he was the alpha male, and that, but you're right. I think he was. Whether he was aware of it or not, he was sending signals through his films, through little things that were in it, that like maybe other closeted gay people would pick up on and stuff, and whether he knew he was doing it or not.
Well, it's funny about that too.
That was that.
Well, Elizabeth Taylor knew.
Really gone down the gay rabbit hole again.
It's all right. Well, Elizabeth Taylor, because she was friends with both of them, and they knew that she accepted them as they were, and I find that interesting. That I think she knew, and she befriended them. It's lagging. I'm sorry. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still here. Yeah, I was just listening to the show.
All right.
That story about when Rock Hudson had the argument with Julie Andrews on the set of Darling Lily. Because they couldn't stand one another, and she's supposed to have shouted to Mr. Hudson, "I'm the leading lady in this film, not you," or something. And then, but then, should I say what he said back to her? I'd probably just best leave that one. But it was. Shall I just say it, Amy? We're both adults, aren't we?
All right.
Will it bring the show down? I've really sold this one badly. I'm going to have to say it now. Well, she's supposed to have said, "Mr. Hudson, after this film's finished, I'm never going to see you again because we've got absolutely nothing in common." To which he replied,
"Yeah."
I think you know where I'm going with that one, Amy. So I won't say what he said.
All right. Well, you know what's ironic is she played Victoria, the movie, and did a really good job. I really thought she was great in that role and very daring for her to do that. So I don't know.
What about
Maybe,
SOB? Have you seen SOB?
yeah.
Have you
Well,
seen SOB?
say that again. No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
That was the one where she did nudity, and it was Blake. It was about, but it was satire on advertising and how kind of how corrupt advertising can be. Blake Edwards directed that, and what was it? The Music Man. What was his name? Robert. Can't remember his name. Robert Newton, was it? Yeah, he was in it, and but it was kind of late era Blake Edwards where he kind of sort of began to lose a lot of his edge as a satirist, if that makes sense, and he got into the habit of just remaking the Pink Panther films again and again.
Yeah, which is, those are great films. But by the way, there was the Casino Royale with Peter Sellers was on a while back, but he wasn't in there until the very end of the movie, and then it was just nonstop. So that film had two parts to it.
He was completely out of control, Sellers, at that point, and he practically killed the producer, because he got into a habit of like fighting hard to get what he wanted in the film, and then as soon as he got it, saying, "I don't want this," and it was like, for instance, he wanted an entire set painted green, at great expense. So they painted this entire set green, and when he turned up, he remembered what a psychic had told him that green was a bad luck colour, and he refused to film on it. And it was that point that I do think with Peter Sellers, I'll be honest, after he had a series of heart attacks that I'm sure you're aware of, maybe in 1964. He had like 10 heart attacks.
Yeah, that's awful.
Over the space of a weekend, and I think for a long time, psychologically, I don't think he recovered. I think it took him a while. His mental frailty was a part of his ailment at that point, and it took him a while to kind of, for like the fog to clear and for him to get back to who he was. And the projects like Casino Royale, which should have been the highlights of his career, they got a bit out of hand. And What's New Pussycat was another one that went over budget and things like. It took him about 10 years between A Shot in the Dark and The Return of the Pink Panther. There's like 10 years, and it took him about 10 years for him to rediscover his form. But then once he found it, it was just amazing. He found a rich new vein of comedy genius. Then Return of the Pink Panther Strikes Back, and Being There. They were like the three sorts of the films where he rediscovered himself.
Yeah. There's this thing where, did you know if he had open heart surgery, or did they just revive him? And do you know?
No, he wouldn't have it. He put it off. He had a pacemaker fitted. Erich Morecambe was a comedian from Morecambe and Wise. He was one of the pioneers of open heart surgery. He was a friend of Peter Sellers, and he was trying to convince Peter Sellers to get open heart surgery, but he was terrified of getting it. He'd had a pacemaker, but actually the day that he died, the day he collapsed, he'd signed the forms that he was going to go into a London clinic for the pre-op to see about getting open heart surgery, but it was too late at that point. He'd gone back to London for a Goons reunion with Spike Milligan and Harry Seacombe, and it was just too late at that point. I mean, you can see he wasn't a well man. If you see him in 1980, he was early 50s, but he looks mid 70s. He'd gone really frail. And sorry, I've turned into Roger Ebert again. I'm sorry, Amy.
There's the reason I was asking was because he probably had a near-death experience amid that when he had his first round of heart attacks, and he was very spiritual. Was he spiritual before that, or was it after?
He always maintained an interest in the spiritual side of things. Well, he came from basically his family were essentially gypsies and fortune tellers and people like that. So he always had a firm belief in that kind of thing. And one part of him was terrified he was going to die young, but a psychic had told him he'd live to the age of 75. So it was like these two things were in conflict. He would, you know, but he would be terrified that death was looming, but at the same time, he didn't think it was possible because of what the psychic had told him. And another, like, I think there was a couple of projects that he had lined up that went on to do well for other people as well. So it's interesting how, had he lived, would he kind of stabilised, or would he have like drifted off again? You know, that kind of thing.
Oh, interesting though. Well, we are here to talk about the Beatles too, because today is the day when they came and I have to get my charger, so I'm going to have to run and do that pretty soon. So maybe while I do that, you could talk about how you feel about the Beatles coming to America, what it's like in Liverpool. What are, you know? Okay.
You're handing the floor over to me, Amy.
Yes.
Okie doke. Well, tell me when now. Hello, everyone. I'm going solo here. So, yes, as Amy said, 60 years ago today that the Beatles went to... you're not going to believe this, Amy. There's a knock on the door just as this happened. I'll be back 1 second. My apologies, everyone, if you're watching. Sorry about that. Just as Amy just handed over for me to do solo, the man from Amazon has just knocked with. See that, Amy? Just as you gave me, just as you told me to go solo, the man from Amazon has just knocked and delivered the parcel. What are the odds on that happening? You know,
during a live show, it's going to happen.
Insane, or what? Yeah. So, going back to the subject. Yes, it's commemorated today, the 60th anniversary of the Beatles touching down in America, and that. I wanted to just before we go on, actually, something that you said the other day. You mentioned the idea that Liverpool were kind of dismissive of the Beatles. No, back in the 60s, where. Do you know? Here's an interesting thing. I mean, that's certainly true. There was kind of a jealousy there, I think, from people in Liverpool. But there's another thing that people don't take into account, which is very potent. I think it's worth discussing. Is that a lot of people in Liverpool, and this is often forgot, never forgive the Beatles for sacking Pete Best. There was whether Pete Best was a good musician or not was immaterial. He was popular in Liverpool, and he had a lot of friends in Liverpool. And I think when the more successful the Beatles came, the more he was kind of taken like to in the arms of people in Liverpool and that, and like they never let sort of like they were hurt for him, and that even though it was we're led to believe it was a purely artistic thing for them going. But that's certainly my mum, for instance. My mum worked with his two nieces in the 70s, and like they hated the Beatles because of what had happened, because they'd seen firsthand how he'd suffered. And I do think it was the right thing that artistically that he was replaced, because Ringo was like the kind of the secret ingredient that they were missing at that point, that sort of put everything together. And I don't think the legacy would have been quite the same with Pete Best. The fact that I don't think they would have descended to sort of the plateau that they did with Pete Best. At the same time, people in Liverpool did, not everyone, but there was a majority, like a sort of a minority of people who kind of held that against them. But that was the other thing, I think, was that, I don't know whether you've seen the footage from people from the Cavern at the time when they were going to America, where there's a woman who says, let the rest of the country have the Beatles, let the rest of the world have them, but let them come back. And I think that was the feeling as well. It felt like, they're going and they're leaving us and that. But Paul's never broken the connection with Liverpool. He's always come back every year since then. Whereas obviously John couldn't come back I mean, in the end, he literally couldn't come back. George, it was a bit kind of Ringo and George. There's still a little bit of kind of caustic atmosphere towards the two of them because, well, I think I've told you before. In 2008, Liverpool won the European Capital of Culture bid for 2008, and we got £1 billion was donated into the city to make it for all these concerts and stuff to make it kind of like the tourist attraction that it needed to be in that. Paul McCartney came back and he did a series of free gigs in Liverpool. But Ringo got paid. Ringo was paid $1 million, converted money to do it. And that was seen as, that was taken the wrong way. Like kind of people were saying, oh, well, Paul did it for nothing, but Ringo came back and made money. And then like there was, he said one or two clumsy things, Ringo as well, like about the city and that. George actually turned down the freedom to the city of Liverpool. He was offered freedom of the city of Liverpool. Paul accepted it. Yoko accepted it on behalf of John and Ringo. But George said, well, I'm not going back there, so why would I need it? And that was seen as a bad thing. I must stress here, though, that's kind of like, that's a minority thing. That's not everyone in Liverpool, but there is some people who have a kind of ill feeling towards them, if that makes sense. But the majority of people love them as much as the rest of the world.
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those things. And Fatima said hi. Hi, Fatima. Thank you.
Hello, Fatima.
Good to see you. But I think there's that feeling that the Beatles belong to them, and so there's a lot of that they've lost. They go out into the world and they lose a part of them, and it's maybe jealousy, maybe who knows, just a feeling that they're going to lose them forever. But the Beatles have always then and now tried to stay connected because they feel like they do love where they came from, and
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't have any, as a Liverpoolian myself and as a Scouser, I don't have any problem with anything that they've done. I can understand it completely. I'll be honest, if I was in their position, I wouldn't come back either.
Well, I think that's the thing.
No, I would.
Yeah. It's
just
like when you
want to live here.
Well, it's that feeling of when you leave a small town and then you're like, I'm never coming back here. But then your whole life, you always think of, and I've been like, I grew up in a small town, and I have to say that I've always sort of romanticized it, even though it was horrible at times. High school and small town. So I think with John,
kind of like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, carry on, Amy. Sorry.
Well, I'll say real quick. You go. Oh, okay, so John, I think the reason why he didn't always want to come back was because if he did, they would try to change him back into something that he'd evolved from, right? So like, oh, you have to be this guy still, and he wasn't that guy anymore. So there's a lot of that feeling of I don't want to go back there and have to have everyone tell me that I should be that guy still, and I can't be that guy.
Yeah, I agree, but there's another key kind of issue there that Paul had a fabulous upbringing in Liverpool and John didn't.
Yeah. John
had a lot of ill memories in Liverpool, not the city itself, but he was regularly beaten by his father before the age of 5. His mother was run over by an off-duty.
Yeah.
The bell go when I said that there, Amy.
Yeah, my daughter just came home, so Julia's home. No, but I don't think that.
Julia.
Hello, Julia. Well, I don't think that John ever got over the fact that officer did that, and there was no reparations, no guilt. It just was sort of swept under the rug, and that's probably a huge reason why John hated authority. Well, not hated. He actually was really good about that. Even donated bulletproof vests to officers in New York before he died, ironically. Yeah. So he did respect the law, but he just didn't like stupid laws and lying politicians. And go listen to what's the song? The song Give Me Some Truth. That if you want to know how
yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I can understand why it would be more of a burdensome place for John, like I said, because I mean, even if you can add Stu Sutcliffe into that equation, he died young and he's in the city, and he was forward thinking, John, wasn't he? I mean, I remember Cynthia Lennon saying that once he decided something, that was kind of, he very rarely looked back. You know, having said that, all the indications are that he was coming back to the city before he was, I mean, not to live, but he was going to come back in some form, you know,
I agree.
before he was taken from us, sadly. So can I ask Amy,
Yes.
has it been, is it being commemorated on American TV and stuff, or have you seen anything in America, like
Nothing. Nothing.
the significance of the date, or
some things online, like I'll go to Google and Google's homepage might have something, but they know they're sucked into my algorithm, so they kind of know. Like, here's the thing about Yoko Ono, and then they had the thing about Stuart Sutcliffe, and I'm like, okay, they know. So I don't know. Beyond that, no, I haven't seen anything on TV, although I'm sure there must be something because the 60th year. Oh, I think in New York, what was it? It was right here, wasn't it? So not TV, but in print.
right? So
right here, New York. Come on. Oh, come on. The New York Daily News had some, which isn't a great newspaper, but it's kind of like the Daily Mail. Some things.
Right. Yeah. I suppose the 50th anniversary was probably bigger, wasn't it? And also, you had David Letterman in New York then, who worked in the Ed Sullivan Theatre, so there was more of occasion to kind of commemorate the 50th anniversary while he was still there. And
well, and here's something.
So
that video that they made for "I'm Only Sleeping," have you seen that video?
Yeah.
It's really good.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah.
Good. It won a Grammy here recently, like this weekend. So.
Oh, did they? Yeah. I saw Kylie Minogue won a Grammy. I don't know whether I don't even know if you know where the Kylie Minogue is, but are you familiar with it? She was a soap star in Britain who became a pop star, and I think she's nearly 60 now. She won her first Grammy at the Grammys a couple of nights back, and that's gone down well over there. And
all right. No, I don't recall that.
Yeah. Taylor Swift is doing well, isn't she?
Taylor Swift. You know what's funny about? Okay, so I'm in Kansas City and that's where the Chiefs are, and I'm seeing like all over the country people who are Swifties are wearing the Chiefs parkas and things like that. It's kind of like soccer. That's the type of level of adoration for.
Is that because she's going out with someone? I mean, sorry, her boyfriend plays for the Chiefs, does he? Is that right? I see.
See, a year ago, you didn't even hear about the guy. It was Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes was like the big player, and we won the Super Bowl last year. So all of a sudden, I think it was probably in the fall when Taylor she was dating someone else, and then out of nowhere, she started dating this guy from the Chiefs, and would go to their games, and now it's just exploded. So
she's now been adopted as one of their own, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And seems to be a good luck. They keep winning.
I'm trying to keep a brave face on this, but I just remember that time, and I told you before what happened when I met her.
Taylor Swift.
God.
Well, I have mixed views on her. Go ahead. What's your story again?
I was doing security at the Liverpool Echo Arena, and I was kind of shocked. She came around the corner, and I promised myself not to stare at people, but like I wasn't expecting to see it. You know, she came around the corner, and I fell over my own foot. Oh God! My blood pressure's gone up just remembering that. Of all the things to do, you know, and she scoffed to whoever she was with. I hope I never meet her again in any capacity. Just in case she remembers that. How do you feel, Amy, about her winning the 4th Grammy? Then she's the first person to do it, isn't she? She's the first person to win four Grammys, I think.
Well, I will say this about her, because I have great respect for her as a woman, and that she's using her voice for not to say who to vote for, but just to vote. So I have a lot of respect for her, and she's gotten a lot of hate for that. And so, yes. And I have respect for her as a musician and a songwriter.
Yeah, I like her, yeah.
But it's not my kind of, her voice really bugs me, and her music, like Debbie Gibson. Okay, to me, it's like Debbie Gibson. And it's like that. It's like everybody loved Debbie Gibson, and I was like, I don't like Debbie. You know, I didn't like that pop type of music. It's just not my kind of music. So it's like that. And so when people are like, she's the greatest writer ever, and I'm like, Dylan, I mean, Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, there are really great writers, and she kind of coins things that other people have done, like let's trademark an entire year, or a song about summer that someone already wrote the title for, but let's trademark it. And so I have like good things and bad things about her, that when she wins, she knows she's going to win, or there's a high potential she can win, but she's always like, oh. You're like, you knew that you're probably going to win, so why the
well, I mean, to win anything, they have to campaign for it anyway, don't they? It's not just so like she must have an idea somewhere along the line. What's going to happen, like you say, you know, and then to do the fake surprise, like, you know, it is very kind of contrived and sanitized and whatnot. But yeah, I agree. If Joni Mitchell, people like that, you know, if they haven't got for it, doesn't make much sense that she should to get for. You know, what about this then, Amy? What's your prediction? Well, I know you're intuitive, so. For the Oscars, do you think it's going to be Bradley Cooper's year, or do you think Barbie could win Best Picture?
No, I think that as soon as you asked, the first thing I saw was Killers of the Flower Moon. So I think that's going to take a lot of. And what was the one that came out right when Barbie came out? That same one. That's going to do really
Oppenheimer.
Well. Oppenheimer. So those two, I don't think that Maestro is going to do that great. It's kind of, it came out late and it kind of got mixed in with all the other movies. So I really think Killers of the Flower Moon is going to do well. I don't know if Leonardo DiCaprio will win, but he might. I think it'll be that guy from Oppenheimer. I think he'll win.
Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, I think I see him standing there accepting it. Who was it the last time? Yeah, who was it with the Emmys? Emma, the girl with the big eyes. And
the one at the end.
I can't remember. Some of those movies came out so late in the.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah,
do you think Robert Downey Jr. might win?
I see him. I almost said him, and I was like, "Is he up for an Oscar?" I saw him when you asked. I saw his face. So I think
he's Best Supporting Actor nomination.
Okay.
And you know, well, he was one of the reasons. I wanted to become I first wanted to become an actor because when I went to see Chaplin.
Yeah, I was gonna say Chaplin.
I went to see Chaplin. I went with my granddad to see Chaplin on a Christmas Eve, and obviously I loved it because I was a big fan of Chaplin anyway, and I do love that film. I think it's the problem with it. You can't really tell Chaplin's story in 2.5 hours. You can't even tell it in 4 hours, really. Well, you can, but you can't really do it the full justice. You know, to make an epic film. But I can remember seeing it and just assuming that Robert Downey Jr. was like this classically trained English.
Well, you know that who was it that I saw?
Thespian, no, from the Bristol Olympic.
Okay, so that movie recently, or TV drama about Cary Grant. You said your actor friend plays him, and he does a really good job.
Jason Isaacs, yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't think the story was very good, and I feel like the fact that they were focusing on his relationship with Diane Carroll. Am I right? Diane. The woman who laughed a lot. And she had
Diane Cannon.
Cannon, okay. And they did LSD together, and then they had a child, and it just didn't seem like
the woman who laughed a lot.
Yes,
sorry, that's a brilliant description. I knew you meant just from that. That's a brilliant description. Sorry, you were saying doing LSD and such.
Yeah, they did LSD together, and then he kind of changed. Obviously, that changes it, but I think they bonded with that. But that, to me, I don't think they had a really great relationship. In fact, when I watched this miniseries, they were always arguing like about everything. And he did some hideous things, like took her dog away and gave her dog away. And I think it would have been more interesting to talk about his bisexuality and maybe more later in his life. They kind of went from his childhood, which is a lot like Charlie Chaplin. And then why that relationship? Out of all the things they could talk about in his life, why that? It would be more interesting to hear about him and Hitchcock and that whole era, but more like at the end of
Well, I
his
mean,
life.
surely the great love of his life was Randolph Scott, wasn't it? And, it's an open secret now. I mean, there's been books published. I mean, both of them are dead. No one's going to get offended if they tell that story. I mean, what's offensive about it anyway? Two people who were in love who couldn't be seen to be in love because the Hollywood system was terrified of homophobia, even though it was built on, built by largely homosexuals or the creative people and stuff. And the fact that they lived together in a cottage, that's...
It's kind of like Raymond Burr, right? Wasn't Raymond Burr? And he dated
that's the story. This kind of idea that every effort was made to stop them, being happy together and stuff. And I agree with you. Yes, that'd make a much better story. I was going to say, I wish Cary Grant had played villains more. Have you seen Suspicion, the Hitchcock film?
Yeah. In fact, I think that was on last night. Isn't that interesting?
The ending's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a really good, because you don't expect that of him.
The original plan was Hitchcock was going to make it explicit at the end that Cary Grant was evil and he was trying to kill her. It's gone all through the film. So at the end, but he couldn't because of the Hays Code, restrictions that were put on.
Well,
and they said, no, you can't do that. So they had to do that. You have to do it so that at the end of the film, it's all in Joan Blondell's mind. Yeah. And he says to her, I haven't been trying to kill you, whatever. That was an attempt at an impression of Cary Grant there. And then to meet the Hays Code standards, they had to sort of clarify that he wasn't the killer. But then that last shot at the end, do you remember it, Amy?
No, I don't. Is it? No. I'm thinking
he puts his arm around. Well, we know that she thinks he's going to kill him with like this glove on and a knife. And at the end, when they're driving away, he puts his arm around her and he's got the glove on one of the hands. So it's
to rewatch it.
Whether he does kill her or whether you have to decide as an audience member. But I think he was brilliant in it. I would have liked to have seen him play more villainous roles. But at the same time, he was great at being Cary Grant, I suppose.
Okay, so moving on to Michael Caine, who he could play really great, lovable characters, or like Rio. I love the movie Rio. That's a great movie. Very cringy, but then he played Get Carter, right, which was sort of Walter White-ish type of. I feel like Breaking Bad was based off of that a little bit. And he also played in that one movie where he works in a financial, probably Wall Street or something. And he kills his wife by electrocuting her down in the basement. Have you seen that? He's just a really big jerk.
Yeah.
It's just awful.
Not Death Trap, no.
Yeah, I think it's called Death Trap. Well, no, that's the one with Laurence Olivier, right? This is...
Sleuth. Sleuth is the one with Laurence Olivier in. Okay. And then he remade that where he played the Laurence Olivier role years later. Death Trap is the one with Christopher Reeve where they're in a homosexual relationship.
All right, so this is a different one. This is more 90s, and he just plays a really bad guy who decides to off his wife by electrocuting her in the basement. And then you'll have to look it up.
I'll look that up. Yeah. I love Michael Caine. Yeah, he's. Did you ever see one of his acting master classes?
Yes, in fact, I had my daughter watch one because she's taking acting, and I said, "You have to watch this." So
it's brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
really if you can get past his hair, which is bizarre.
Yeah, it's
like a weird side braiding that he's got on his thatched blonde kind of hair. It looks like a pineapple on his head, but he's obviously probably go down in history as the greatest British movie star of all time. He should do, Michael Caine, because he's been there for like 7 decades, hasn't he? Probably longer than that, and he has taken on But anyway, sorry, we were going to talk about the Beatles conquering America, weren't we? And I've gone off on a tangent as usual. My apologies, folks, if you're listening. So, Amy, were you familiar with John Lennon before you were familiar with the Beatles, or was it Beatles then you found out John Lennon through that?
Well, growing up, the Beatles would still play on the radio. So I have a specific memory of Sundays. Okay, so like a Saturday, cleaning the walls, scrubbing the wallpaper walls of my mother's house, and the Beatles were on the radio, and so they had already broken up. That whole era was over, but they would still play them, and Let It Be was on the radio. And being Catholic, I thought, oh, he's talking about Mother Mary, like Mother, the Catholic Mother Mary, which maybe he was a little bit. But I've talked to other people, and they've said they felt the same thing, that they thought of the Catholic tones of that. And so I knew about the Beatles, and
yeah,
they were still big when I was a kid.
I like in Get Back where the rehearsal Let It Be, and where John's singing the lead. Nobody says, "Wake up to the sound of music." Julie Andrews comes to me. So, we've already spoke about her earlier. I don't know why she keeps cropping up in the conversation. But no, I agree. Yeah, there is some kind of like religious connotation affixed to it, isn't it? Obviously his mother was Mary, but like you say, Mother Mary. So I can remember you saying your mum told you when John had died. So see, because with me it was the other way around. It was I became aware of John first, and then through John I became aware of the Beatles. But at that point he'd already, passed away. So it was and he was fated in Liverpool. That can't, he was diatised pretty much in Liverpool. So it was like that was my kind of entree into him. Do you know anyone at the? Have you ever spoke to anyone at the time who was watching the Ed Sullivan Show? Like, has anyone ever give you the memories of that first show?
Well, yeah, just through various Beatles chats and things like that. Yeah, I've heard people talk about. I even worked with a lady once who said that she had gone to one of their concerts when she was a teenager. So I thought that was cool. They that's their Beatles. So I always feel like the Beatles belong to them. That the girls that were there in the very beginning. So I always really like to hear those stories. And
yeah, do you know what's interesting as well? When you see them arriving in JFK, was it JFK? Was it called JFK Airport then? Yep. Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Yeah. Obviously, there's a vast number of girls there, but there's also a significant number of boys there as well. I don't mean, I don't mean like they were there for I don't mean they were gay. I mean there was young lads who were interested in them as well, like purely in the style and the music and the personality, and they were there to see them as well. I think that I think that was a key difference. Actually, I think in Britain, I think it purely was girls, where the audience was in America when they got there was like a lot more kind of mixed. It wasn't just one or the other. Mm-hmm. Apparently, when they went to France, it was just boys. And they were still screaming as well. So that's that must have been strange.
Yeah, it must have been. And they were checking out their guitars and amps more than just like the songs. But that's the thing too. I may have said this before about them is, so let's say most of the fans were female. And I remember a show I watched where it was primarily girls, like 12, 13-year-old girls screaming their heads off. But they never played less or patronized them or acted like the music wasn't still important. They went out and played it. It was excellent. And they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I find that kind of amazing because let's say we have the hair rock or like hard metal or whatever, headbanging rock or even emo or whatever. That is geared more to guys in a way. It's more aggressive.
Yeah.
But the Beatles, they weren't like that. They were just loved that people listened to the music, and they still held a high standard of music quality. So, and that says a lot about how they felt about female fans, that they respected them, and
Yeah. Apparently, John was on his best behavior as well, wasn't he? Until didn't someone take a lot like someone got a pair of scissors and cut George's hair or something?
Yeah, that's awful.
And John finally lost his temper, and because the social functions they'd avoided in Britain, mixing with the super upper classes, which they didn't want to do. They were forced into it when they came to America, weren't they? Because they didn't really know the territory, and they had to play that. That was the particular game that they had to play. And I think John bit his lip, but as soon as that happened, he became a Liverpudlian again and told people what he thought about it. He said, didn't he? Why don't you just put us in a fucking cage and throw throw food at us, because that's what it's like. It's like a zoo. You can understand, I suppose, can't you? Like, kind of. I tell you what is a bit eerie, Amy, as well. You know when when George had a sore throat, they go out into New York, and George was in bed with a sore throat.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of eerie. You know when you see them in Central Park, and you can see the Dakota building in the background.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you think, just what would happen there? Just 16 years later, you know, obviously John had no way of knowing, what was going to happen. We know with the benefit of like insight what's going to happen, but kind of like so naive at that point, weren't they? Weren't familiar with America.
They kind of echoed, but I guess they stayed at the Plaza Hotel, which I believe was built by the same people who built the Dakota, and then and John did say he felt that New York was a lot like Liverpool. So because you have the port, you have the ships, and then you have the very Gothic architecture.
Yeah, it was. He said it was like a giant Liverpool, didn't he? He said it was like a giant 24-hour Liverpool. Where like supersized version. Well, I mean, the Dakota building and the Plaza were also built by the same person who built Lime Street Station in Liverpool, but he didn't know that at the time, John, when he moved in. It was, I think. I've got this book that I'm going to send you called Lennon 1980, where he decided to, once they bought up more apartments into the Dakota, John decided to knock a wall through to make one room bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And when he knocked through the wall, it had the name of the architect on it. It actually had Lime Street written in it, which completely blew his mind.
Wow.
That he should have moved into a house with that there, especially now he's got a train named after him in Lime Street. It's kind of weird the way everything's kind of mapped out for him. Like that, isn't it?
Yeah, and there's underneath the Dakota, there's a subway. Can you believe it? I was watching one of those, I don't know if you know about these people, but they have these live walkers that walk around New York, and they just with their camera. And so he went there, and then he walked underneath to the subway underneath. And I was like, oh, I didn't know there'd be a subway, but that makes sense. They're everywhere underneath New York. And it had sort of things John Lennon related inside the subway.
Yeah.
So that was cool.
Amazing, isn't it? That kind of the way the little coincidences that all go together to make up the bigger kind of, the bigger picture. So I asked you about this the other day. I asked you, not in person, but when we were talking. So what did you think of the just so we've got it again, like we can have a little discussion. What did you think of the Paul McCartney, Freddie Mercury duet? Oh, hello.
Julia. I thought it was good. And, I wonder if they did it because she's doing dance moves over here. She took dance class.
Let's have a look. Go on.
Doing some ballet.
Go on, do it on camera, Julia.
You do a dance move on camera, just don't fall on camera.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have Julia Shire.
You just did ballet.
Oh, there she is. Fabulous. There you go. That's very Karate Kid, what you're doing there.
Yeah, Karate Kid. The crane. Isn't that what it is? The crane. And there she is.
Dressed a bit like Debbie Harry. Hello, Julia.
Miss Julia.
What were we saying, Amy, before that?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Paul McCartney, yeah. I thought it was.
So what did you think of that?
I thought it was good. And I feel like it reminded me of Paul's song Waterfalls. It has that same sort of era sound, maybe 1980s. It kind of has that. So I wonder if he wrote it in that time. That's what I'm talking about,
Yeah, he wrote it. He wrote it specifically for Freddie, I believe. Freddie wasn't able to. I think with the view, he had sympathy for Freddie because he knew he was being stalked.
Yeah.
That is insane. There's nothing I can say that's as interesting as a woman dancing with a cat in the background there. You're literally cat dancing. Fabulous.
I wouldn't
You
know
might get
how that
scratched.
worked for cats.
Yeah, you'd probably get scratched
Like
if
cats
you did.
doing ballet.
She's acting crazy. Yeah, that's.
How is the cat doing?
She's fine. She's rolling around back there.
Yeah.
She's in happy world right now.
There you go. You know, I had to kill a rat the other day.
Oh gosh.
Have you ever had to do that?
No, I have not had to do that, but I've had to do the mice thing. And this cat, Miss Kitty, is a great mouse killer. So She's on it. It's great.
Yeah, you know, you think my cat would be able to do that for me, wouldn't you? But I had to finish it off with an iron bar, and its eyes looked at me as if to say, "Why?" You know, I felt terrible for about. I still feel terrible, but you know, at the same time, I have a mother to look after. I can't have her getting scabies or something, whatever rats bring in, you know, that kind of thing.
One time, my cat that I had when I still lived at home with my mom, because I was like 19, I think, and I missed my mother. The cat, I let her in. It was night, and she had a mouse in her mouth, and it was alive. So then my mother woke up and the mouse went through the kitchen, and it was chaos for hours. I'll never forget that. That was the moment I was like, I gotta move out. I think I'm ready to move out.
Yeah, I mean, the rats in our street are like, I'm sure there's been nuclear warhead testing somewhere, because they're absolutely huge. You know, they're like, you know, they're like knee high. Sorry, this is a horrible thing to discuss, but you know, like, I'd sooner not have to kill one, but at the same time, I'd sooner not get in my house, you know.
Oh yeah, I understand. No, because once they come in, they don't leave. It's like when a fly gets in, and then it's like you got in, but you can't figure out how to leave. You open the door, and they won't go out the door. So
that's it. Yeah, I'm just thinking of Jeff Goldblum now, Amy.
What's that?
You know, Jeff Goldblum and the Fly.
Oh yeah. I haven't seen that forever. It's been a while.
That was an accident waiting to happen. If you're gonna have a teleport machine in the kitchen where you're cooking food, right, there's always the risk of flies getting in. You know, you think in being a genius he would have worked that one out, but you know, you live and learn.
Well, what was I going to say also? I have a situation where somehow a squirrel has figured out how to get into the roof, and now I can't get them out. So I have to, I'm trying to figure out what to do. So I used to throw some bread for them, but I can't anymore because I'm sending the message that they have to go. But that's fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's the scratching that goes. When that blackboard thing is down the blackboard thing, it's when they start scratching. It's really.
It's annoying.
Repulsive. Disgusting. Just we talking about before about Killers of the Flower Moon. I really liked that film. It was a really good film, but I did have a problem with Leonardo DiCaprio playing a doughboy. But he's in his 50s now, or he must be nearly 50, Most of the soldiers who fought in the trenches in World War I were in the 20s. He's got to that age where he probably should sort of leave those boyish parts behind now, or they should have tried to de-age him in some capacity. I think that I would have enjoyed it more if they would have done that. But did you see Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
If I have, it's been a while.
It's the Tarantino film.
Oh, yeah, maybe I haven't seen that one. I've seen.
He was hilarious in that.
I think I've seen parts of it.
It's the fictional account of, the story that the Manson murders, that they had Steve McQueen. Apparently they targeted Steve McQueen at some point. So Quentin Tarantino asks the question: what would have happened if they got into Steve McQueen's house? And that's what the film is about. And of course, he would have killed them because he had guns everywhere, and he would have fought back. And but it's a really funny film, though. The way they go about it. And are you a fan of Tarantino or?
Yeah, I am. It's one of those things where I admire his writing, and he's really genius with his writing. But I can't sit and watch all the films because it can be pretty violent sometimes, and I'm really sensitive to stuff like that. But I do really respect him as a writer, and I've read some of his scripts just to see some of his writing style. So, I mean, what's the
I think he's a better writer than he is director.
Mm-hmm. You know what he looks like?
At the same time,
Go ahead.
It's difficult for someone to interpret his work, I think. So that's maybe why he feels he has to direct him, or maybe he just feels he's a director. Sorry, I interrupted you there, Amy.
No, it's fine. No, I was gonna say that he reminds me of. He looks like that guy that played George Jones recently, and then he was in The Shape of Water. You know that he plays the bad guy. Who's that guy?
Yeah,
He looks just like him.
I know who you mean. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, his name escapes me. I'm trying again. I know who you mean. Oh, yeah, if there is a resemblance there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. So, but you got the video, didn't you? That I did of Men Love Avenue.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and okay, so, and then people were talking about how posh John was. Well, he was, but at the same time, and I love that video, by the way. I'd love to see how close. What was interesting was how close Strawberry Fields was to Aunt Mimi's house, because when I wrote about John, it was close, and then also was Julia's house down the road, which wasn't too. So he had like a little circle thing that he would do, I think, and cut through some yards or whatnot. But yeah, that was really fascinating. But was he posh? I mean, the thing was, John never felt like he belonged. He felt like he was an orphan half the time, which he kind of was. And then Aunt Mimi would never really let him have anything. So he lived in a posh place, but he also was not.
Yeah, he was. I think it's interesting that he's been labelled as posh now, but at the time he wouldn't have been by people, especially if they knew his background. You know, he would have been seen as a charity case, unfortunately, by a lot of people. You know, like for instance, if he tried to play on his poshness, he would have been told, "Oh, you're not really from money. You've just been taken in because your parents." Literally, as cruel as that statement, he wouldn't have been seen as it. You know what I mean? But that's why I like that line in Working Class Hero. You know, you're all fucking peasants as far as I can see. Which basically, I've got more money than the lot of you now. They're like, those people look down your nose at me. You won't earn any of this in your lifetime, you know. That kind of, but I don't care because I want to be working class. It's like dichotomy of ideas. You know, I'm saying the same thing. You've got an insight into John. You know exactly what I mean. You know.
Well, yeah. No. So he clearly wasn't posh. I mean, compared to, say, Ringo and Paul. Paul was middle class. George was probably more lower class. Ringo too. So John, was he in the upper middle class? Yes, he was. But like I said, he never really felt like he belonged. And one image that came to mind was in art college when he never had the right tools, and Cynthia would give him pencils and things. She had all the right stuff. So that's a good example of how he never really had anything. He probably would spend his money on cigarettes, but you know,
didn't she used to have to? Didn't she used to know when they're running to exams and stuff? She had to do his. She had to finish his patents off and stuff because he couldn't be bothered doing it. And no, like if he needed 10 patents, him and Stuart Sutcliffe would be doing it for him while he'd be off smoking or something like you said, and that. And because he couldn't care less whether he got kicked out of there or not. But it was, you know, or maybe he could, but like he just on the outside, but that's interesting in Cynthia's book where she said he had no fear of any authority whatsoever. It was like the other students would be sitting there quaking that they were going to upset the tutors, whereas John seemed to be antagonising them. You know, also he dressed as a teddy boy, which I don't know whether you know. I don't know whether you read that term. That was kind of like the punk kind of aesthetic of the 1950s in Liverpool, the teddy boy look.
Yeah.
And, you know, they used to carry knives in the pockets and stuff, and they had to put it in the hair and things like that. And it was kind of like a threatening way to be. So he was amongst these bohemians, and he was dressed like that. So a lot of people were scared of him, including the teachers. And that, but that's what I've heard. Yeah, like he never had, like you said, he never had any pencils or paper, or because he'd, you know. Also, he wouldn't wear his glasses, would he? And like he'd get off at the wrong stop, but it wouldn't be like one stop away. It'd be like 10 stops away. Wouldn't put his glasses on and then get completely lost, and then think, I'll just go home. So that just makes him more endearing to me for some reason. It just shows he's more human, you know, than anything, you know.
He probably felt that he would get beat up if he wore his glasses around town. because it made him look like somebody that was weak.
Yeah.
So I think that's why. But some of my favorite pictures of John are where he wears his big Buddy Holly glasses. I
Yeah.
think those are really good pictures.
I think Buddy Holly was the catalyst for him becoming comfortable with that, wasn't it? If Buddy Holly wears glasses, well, I'll wear them. And then, of course, How I Won the War was
right.
That was like the next kind of revelation, wasn't it? Like he decided he liked the look and that, and
I read that where Dick Lester is really worried about John getting his hair cut for the movie and is really supervising it to the inch. And John's ready to go. He's ready to get it cut off. And then Richard Lester hands him these glasses, which the Revolver era, you see John and all the other Beatles trying on lots of different glasses. So they're really trying to find a look. They're really changing. They're changing. And so, yeah. And then, so Richard Lester's the one, at least from what I intuited, that he gives John these glasses, and John's like, "Oh, I'm like Gandhi now." And Dick Lester says, "Oh God, he thinks he's like Gandhi." John Lennon thinks he's Gandhi, and he sees himself as a new man, and that's really, he lets go of the hair and the look, the Beatle look, and all of a sudden he's his own, like this new self. And I think he liked that to change and become a new person every once in a while. So,
well, he was a chameleon, wasn't he? Probably maybe that's why he felt a bit restricted by the Beatles at times, because he had to maintain a certain image when he wanted to, he wanted to be more fluid in his kind of his outward aesthetic. Sorry, I know some big words. I'm sorry, Amy, but I like it. The Strawberry Fields video. Where he hands Paul his glasses.
It's actually Penny Lane, and that's okay because they're both filmed.
Oh, it's Penny Lane, yeah.
They filmed those last week, 1967. So I was looking on Google, and I found Google Maps. I found the Strawberry Fields in Knowles Park.
Yeah.
If you go, you see the aerial, like the satellite view. And then some people have taken pictures of it. The tree's gone, but there's a tree trunk is still there. So you could literally go there, and they filmed part of Penny Lane there too. But most of Penny Lane was filmed on. But I know what you're talking about. So first it starts off where John is walking down the street, and he's got these rectangle glasses, right? And then he walks up to the.
That's right, yeah.
And then Paul, wait, there's sunglasses. No, wait. Well, whatever it is, he and Paul exchanged glasses. And what I saw from that was, like you said, his friend helping him out. But I also saw a different point of view. Like they were exchanging points of view with each other by exchanging the lens that they see the world.
That's brilliant.
But
I think you're right. Yeah, I
love that opening.
One, yeah. It's brilliant. That's a good. I never thought of it from that way, Amy. But yeah, you're probably right, of course. But yeah, and it has its origins, doesn't it? Because he kept losing his. When they were in Hamburg and places like that, he kept losing his glasses. So Paul said to him, "Just give them to me," and that's brilliant. By the way, we can talk more about this off camera. The script and writing that we're talking about, the John Lennon film that we're collaborating on, Amy. Yeah. Did you like the bit where he phones Paul in it? I don't know if you remember that. There's a scene where he I put a scene in it where he phones Paul, and he has trouble getting through to Paul. And he has to go through all this kind of rigmarole to get through to him. And as soon as Paul answers the phone, he instinctively knows it's John, and that throws him kind of because I do think there was that aspect that he was kind of afraid of his dependency on Paul, if that makes sense. That's not a good way to describe it, but I think he was trying to move away from that. Well, I think one of the reasons he cut off communication altogether was the fact that he missed them essentially, and kind of to get away from it, he had to make a complete break, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I don't remember that. That must have been in that whole era of me hyper fixating and
that's okay.
Well, Yoko wouldn't always let the phone calls go through, so sometimes it was hard for Paul to get through. So it's kind of amazing. I know I've seen that. Isn't Adrian Jared Harris and Adrian, I can't remember his last name, or Aidan Quinn and Jared
Aidan
Harris.
Quinn, yeah, that's Aidan Quinn, yeah.
And they play them, which it was a kind of a crappy, cheap movie, but it's one of the only ones where they have just John and Paul, and have them go through that era where they maybe could have gotten back together as far as working together. I mean, I think the thing they took each other for granted the way you do a family member. They knew that they still had a connection. Everything was cool. They kind of hated each other. They have that love-hate relationship, but they they hated each other. They loved each other. And someday they would get back together again and everything would be fine, but just not right now. And that happens to a lot of people because your kids.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Kids in life. And so it's kind of sad when you think about how Paul couldn't get through all of those times and tried. It's really sad. But
yeah, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I heard someone saying once that, like it was David Bowie actually, that he said that he felt Paul McCartney's his drug bust in Japan. When Paul McCartney got arrested. In 1980, he got arrested for having drugs in Japan, didn't he? And he was put in jail, and wings were kicked out of him. And David Bowie said that in an interview, that he always felt that was an attempt by Paul to get John's attention on a big scale. He said that, there was a million ways that he could have got, if he really needed the drugs, he could have got them when he was over there, and someone like McCartney would have known that. But like subconsciously, he wanted to draw attention to himself in some fashion. I don't know, maybe subconsciously he knew Paul was aware time was running out between the two of them and he didn't have time left. That might just be pie in the sky, but it's an interesting thing to look at. I think John was the only one who didn't make a public comment on it at the time. I think the others, George made a comment and so did Ringo. I think John stayed a bit quiet. But then, of course, there's the rumor, isn't it, that Yoko orchestrated the bust?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. And I was going to say that it's for entertainment purposes only, and we don't know. But I do feel that there was something to that. Don't you feel like she probably didn't like the idea that if they did get back together, John and Paul, and had a more success, that it would take away from her and everything she'd built with John. So I do feel that there was something to that, where it was almost like a revenge thing, perhaps, for whatever reason. But maybe like you said, maybe the universe also was trying to send a message to John of, look, Paul needs help, and we're bringing Paul to your attention again. And because John had limited time, and it was the time when they could have, who knows?
Could have been, and it's just, what do you think? Were they going to get together? I mean, you would know more. Were they going to get together in 81, or is that just wishful thinking on behalf of like biographers and people?
I got 82, so something would have happened in 82 where they maybe would have been at the same concert together, because that was starting to be the era of concerts for benefit, and they've missed something like that where they would have been at the same type of benefit concert. So maybe not like, see, John had this big fear of being like Art and Garfunkel, where it was kind of like a joke to him in a way, even though I love Art. I love Paul Simon and Garfunkel. Sorry, Simon and Garfunkel. Okay.
I knew you meant.
Yeah. It's weird how.
Did you just say Art and Garfunkel?
Yeah. Well, I think he felt
call yourself a musician.
He didn't want to be like, even though they were like, I would say they were more like the Everly Brothers, but he didn't want to be like that. I think John just had so much of a feeling of, I don't want to be tied up to that again. And if I do something, it's just going to be never ending, and Paul's going to want to do this and that. And so he just didn't want to get it started. So I think it would have been where they were at the same place together, playing, not together, but with, but maybe at one point they would have written a musical together. So like 87 or 90 or something like that. But it just wasn't meant to be, obviously.
Interesting stuff. Do you think John would have done something with Queen?
Not more than a nod of, I love you guys, I wish you well. I don't think that he would. He just wasn't the type of guy that wanted to. He worked with David Bowie, but see, there was a lot of drinking involved. And so without the alcohol, I think John just really didn't want to get back into that anymore. He wanted, so he probably wouldn't have. He just would have said, "Oh, I really like these guys. I really admire them, and I wish them well." But I think he just didn't want to do that.
I see. So that was kind of his fear of like a kind of relapse, perhaps, was that woven into kind of his thought process at that point. He didn't want to go for those reasons. That's really interesting, Amy.
I could be wrong, though. I mean, like I said, we don't have a chance to find out. So, who knows? None of us could know.
It's an interesting fact, oh yeah.
Go ahead.
I say it's interesting. It might be only interesting to me, but and I know I'm a hive of useless information, and I apologise. But do you know one of the reasons that Thriller was able to sell so many records? And I might have mentioned this to you before. I'm sorry if I have, but one of the reasons Thriller was able to sell so many records and meet so many kind of deadlines for record stores and various things was because studios have been stockpiling vinyl for the day that the Beatles got back together. For hypothetically, if the Beatles get back together and do a live album or a studio album, we're gonna have to have all this vinyl ready to go to meet the criteria of the public who want to buy it. Yeah. Then when John was assassinated, suddenly it was a question of, well, they're not going to get.
Extras.
The studio, the labels that have been stockpiling all this were then able to sell it onto like Epic Records when Thriller was released. So inadvertently,
interesting.
They helped Michael Jackson's career out in that sense.
And that's interesting. I've never heard that, but that's interesting. I
another question for you then, Amy, is how does, because you have this connection to John, how did John feel about Michael Jackson buying the Beatles songs?
He felt bad for Paul, and he felt it was excessive, and he basically says, just like all the other shite people who tried to own us. That's what he just said. And he, not anything bad against Michael Jackson, but just the action itself was sort of greedy, and that's literally what I heard was just nothing different than all the shite people did to us. So people trying to own them, you know.
That's brilliant, Amy. I feel like I've really spoken to him directly there. That's fantastic. Tell him thanks.
You're welcome. He knows. He said you're welcome. Yeah, I don't think anybody really liked that, and the fact that Paul had to beg him and he still wouldn't. It's like, why? That's not your music. Why would you want to? It's not a commodity. Don't you have any respect for artistry and what it meant to write those songs, and that it was their lives, you know, and that the hell they'd been through with lawyers and publishing companies, and that they never really owned their own music. And so then someone comes along, and it was kind of heartless of Michael Jackson to not concede on that a little bit. And he would never do it. It's weird how he would never do it.
I've seen Paul McCartney talking about it, where, and it is a tragic comedy, you know, where he said, I took him to one side and said, Michael, I said, what you want to do with your money? You want to consider, buying records, because that's what I bought publishing, and it's making me a lot of money. And Michael Jackson said, I'm going to buy your records. And Paul was like, I love this kid, and of course that's exactly that's what he did. He went and bought his records on Paul's recommendation. So it is. That's what happened. It is funny in that respect. Of course, the fact is though that it didn't cost them anything to write it. So like, if you think about it, you write a song and then you've got to pay 50 million, whatever it is, to own it. It is very excessive, and that. Of course, Paul had more money at that point than Michael Jackson, I think. Inadvertently as well, that undoubtedly made Michael Jackson an unpopular person within the music industry itself. Even the point when his records stopped selling as well as they did, there was always going to be repercussions for that, because because of the sort of cutthroat way he went about things. And I'm not suggesting that. I think that was the catalyst for a lot of his problems, that a lot of people were kind of unforgiving to when his problems manifested.
Well, he was a strange guy, Michael Jackson. And so we'll just put it at that he just, there's some people where you say something and they take it to the bank literally, and you go, oh my God, why did I say that to them? There's just people like that. So you have to watch out what you say around certain people. And it happened to Paul, and he didn't know. He was probably just kind of joking, to be honest. He didn't think, not my music literally, but like somebody else's music would be, or maybe if he did buy it, he would be generous in that, who knows, but it just became another object that Michael Jackson owned and nobody else could have, and he sort of hoarded it, and not cool.
Yeah. So Amy, I think I told you this before, there's a project come back into me horizon. I don't know, but I'm really struggling with whether I should do this one. I think I told you I've got the Robin Williams project lined up. It's a bit pie in the sky at the minute. I've been asked to do it, but I haven't seen a script yet. And then the producer was saying, well, you can work on the script and that, and I don't really like going in and those kind of pretenses. I prefer to have a script. Hire me as an actor or as a writer, but don't hire me as a writer. Sorry, an actor, and then expect me to rewrite and and then after sort of argue a screen act, credit with the SAG, that kind of thing. But I'll be honest, the Robin Williams project frightens me a bit, because it's like, that is such a high wire to go out on, and if you got it wrong, it would be spectacular. I think I could do it. I think I could do a good job.
I think I've always had good feelings about it. I've never had anything bad, but why? What are your misgivings? And I'll have to go soon because I have to go pick up my son from school. But what are the bad things that you feel about it that kind of scare you?
I don't want to. I don't want it to dwell on his suicide. I think I don't want to do a film where Robin Williams is in a dark room contemplating his problems. I think I don't think the world has come to terms with how his life ended yet, if that makes sense. And I think there's another story to be sold. I'd sooner do something that was a celebration of Robin Williams than was kind of. Having said that, it's difficult to avoid, because it's like this, it's like a roller coaster that's going straight for the cement wall. We know what's going to happen. The other thing that has come up my way again is this Al Jolson project, and so that brings with the connotations of racism, which I can obviously, if he went out and did an Al Jolson show as he did it now, with minstrelsdom and stuff like that, that would be racist. But and I think anything you can do, you're on like kind of you're playing with fire there. You are going to offend some people, but
honestly,
the problem with Al Jolson is that the blackface minstrelsdom came about because that was the only way he could disguise his features, was because he was this prominent Russian Lithuanian Jewish immigrant, and to get on stage, he had to sort of blend in, and minstrelsdom was popular. And then he tried to kind of get away from it throughout his career, but he was stuck with it because people kept coming to, including African American audiences, they'd come to see him and they'd want him to wear the makeup. But that is it. That is a good project. The script was brilliant, the one that I got shown, and I think it would be kind of fun to do that as well, to play Al Jolson. How does John feel about Al Jolson, Amy?
Well, okay. So, didn't his
Can
father...
I have his advice?
Okay, so his father, Freddie Lennon, he grew up listening to that music, and his father, so John's grandfather, they would listen to and play that music a lot. And so John says he doesn't have anything wrong with it. It's okay. You didn't write the script. You would just be portraying Al Jolson, and maybe there's something to be said about that. We try to hide things, but he actually did it with good intention. So if you portray him, it would show the good intention, and maybe it would show a lot of race relations at the time, and you could uncover that too, and how he sort of tried to combine and interracial work together through the arts. So it could be a good thing. It's just how you approach it.
That's it.
Yeah, I think it's how you approach it. And I just saw a sparkle when I said that. And the other thing so I think that it's okay. It's like either one or both. You go at it with the right intent. Now, Robin Williams, I got that I saw the scene where he killed himself, and then looking at his dead body, and he said, "I fucked up." Janis Joplin said the same thing. I fucked up. Like, whoops, oh, I fucked up. So it's not showing his death scene and why. It might actually help people understand what his headspace was, as long as that's not like the whole movie is. Because really the movie should be about his genius and what a loving guy he was and how talented he was. And also that he had this secret, medical diagnosis that he was scared. And also depression is something that kills a lot of people every year, and people suffer through, and they get judged for it. And so maybe you could show, I feel like the first time you told me about the Robin Williams, and I'll have maybe other people could come on and comment later. When you told me about that, I was like, oh yeah, you need to do that. I really feel like it's the right time, and that you're the right person to do it. So you need to show that he had the.
Okay, I'll do it, Amy. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I think you'll do a good job, and there's a reason why you've been chosen to do that. So you could do both.
Do I look enough like him, do you think?
I think you have a little bit of his look, so I think that you would do him justice in that fact. And it'll be a challenge for you as an actor, that's good. I think every actor wants to challenge themselves, and you will find the place, that emotion and, channeling him, that will really help you grow too as an actor. I mean, that's every role that you play would be sort of a growth for you. So I think that you definitely should do it.
Okay, I'll do it then, Amy, on your advice. That's a very positive way of looking at it. And I think it is good to be frightened of a project, I think. I think if you get too comfortable, that's when problems. It's good to challenge yourself, I think. As you know yourself, as an artist and stuff, it's good.
And the Al Jolson
kind of
thing.
Put yourself out there on a limb. Okay, I'll do it, Amy.
Okay, yeah. I think that's good. All right, and I do need to go, and just we were going to say, maybe I'll post some like little videos, not me, but just things about the Beatles tonight, because this is the day when they came to America. And if anybody has access, maybe I'll post the links for some of those videos where they come to America. But I'll do this really quick. This girl that says she loves George's eyelashes. It's one of my favorite Beatle clips ever. Have you ever seen it?
Oh, I don't know what you mean. Yeah, yeah.
Let's see. You probably can't see it, but oh gosh, come on. Go back.
Ringo has a sexy nose.
A sexy nose.
Oh, sexy eyelash.
Sexy nose.
What? Got sexy eyelash. No, sexy eyelash. That one. That one. You got sexy eyelash.
I think that's the funniest thing ever.
That's a brilliant thing.
Yeah, so we'll end it on that.
I like that what John does but John does the eye flutter thing.
Yeah.
He does like when he's still turn left to Greenland or something. I think that's what it is anyway.
That's Mal Evans in Help, and then they had him in. Didn't they do that again? It was a running joke. So they had Mal Evans in. Didn't they ask that in Hard Day's Night, or was it in Magical Mystery Tour? Because that joke comes back again. Turn left to Greenland. That's when they were playing in the curling. There's a scene, and
I love your Liverpool accent, Amy. That's
well, in Help, there's a scene where they're in Switzerland and they're going down. They show the skiers going down the hill and they're having the competition. And there's a group at the bottom of the hill of onlookers. And there's a guy, and it's John. It's John. And he's hiding behind, and they're trying to hide him. So these are extras in the film, and he snuck in, and he's like hiding trying to get in front of him. And I'm like, that's John. So if you ever go watch Help, and you'll see it. It's
it's brilliant, yeah. I second. I've definitely watched Help. It's really worth rediscovering. I love it.
I do too. I love that movie. Not as good as Hard Day's Night, but I love that movie. It's a lot of fun to watch. And that's where they really got into the whole India thing and the sitar. And I remember watching it last year and thinking, this was right before they met the Maharishi and right before George started playing the sitar and Ravi Shankar and all that. And I really felt like Help was catalyst in, well, first John had the LSD right before. And that's kind of the reason he wrote Help, was because it opened him up and he started to be more honest about his feelings, about saying who he was and how he felt. And then all of that, the Indian experience sort of blossomed in them and created a whole sound. And
absolutely, yeah. The other thing I like, when he's got the beard on and the glasses, and it's pretty much how he'll look in the bedding.
Yeah, all four of them look like they would in a couple of years' time. It's so weird. That's a weird scene. Well, I just told him we're going around there. Well, I told them we're going around there. We're going around there.
Anyway, well, this has been enjoyable. Anyway, Amy, sorry, I know you've got to
I got to go.
shoot off. Okay, well.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, well, lovely talking to you tonight. Love you.
Love you too. And bye, everybody.
No,
bye,
no.
There. Happy Beetle Day. See you later.
Keep
bye,
on keeping on. Farewell.
All right, we'll still here, but bye.